Have you ever wondered how some cartoons from the 1980s even made it onto television? Shows that looked bright and friendly on the outside but hid wild ideas, risky messages, and moments that made parents gasp. The 80s loved to push limits and sometimes went so far that even the networks panicked. And trust me, one entry in this list may make you question how it ever aired at all. Let's start counting down. Number 10. Rambo, The Force of Freedom. 1986. Imagine turning one of the most intense action movie heroes into a children's cartoon. That was the bold move behind Rambo, The Force of Freedom. Kids tuning in expected adventure. What they got was a full blast of paramilitary action that looked like it had escaped from a late-night action marathon. The show followed Rambo leading a special missions unit against a shadowy criminal group, but instead of gentle lessons or quiet resolutions, episodes leaned hard on rapid-fire chases, heavy weapons, and geopolitical storylines that felt a little too close to real-world news. Parents were stunned. Teachers complained that kids showed up reenacting battle scenes, building pretend bases, and arguing over mission tactics. Watchdog groups accused the show of glamorizing conflict and wrapping complex world issues in bright colors. In countries outside the United States, the reaction was even stronger. Broadcasters demanded edits or refused to air certain episodes entirely. They felt the tone clashed with the idea of safe children's programming. Some reviewers joked that it was less a cartoon and more a simplified war documentary. But here is the twist. Kids loved it. The thrill kept them glued to the screen every week. Even now, it stands as a perfect example of how the 80s took chances no studio would try today. Rambo, The Force of Freedom did not just push the line, it sprinted past it. Number 9. Gravedale High, 1988. At first glance, Gravedale High looked like a harmless monster comedy about teens trying to survive high school. But the show packed more attitude and weirdness than anyone expected. Instead of gentle humor, it leaned fully into wild character designs, spooky jokes, and a tone that felt stranger than anything airing that year. The students were exaggerated versions of classic movie creatures, a zombie who fell apart at the worst time, a vampire who tried too hard to be cool, a werewolf with the energy of an entire marching band. The problem began when parents saw the first wave of episodes. Some felt the show was too intense for young viewers. Others claimed the tone encouraged grim humor that kids did not understand. A few even argued that the characters' over-the-top personalities were built on stereotypes. The complaints grew until broadcasters stepped in. Certain regions edited scenes, trimmed jokes, or quietly reduced how often episodes aired. Despite the pushback, the show found a loyal audience. For many kids, it was their first taste of quirky animated humor that did not feel watered down. The monster cast brought something different to a television landscape full of safe and predictable choices. Gravedale High ended quickly, but its unusual style left a mark. People today still remember its short run and wonder how such a bizarre experiment made it onto regular programming. It remains a classic case of 80s cartoon boldness. Number 8. Inhumanoids, 1986. If you want to see how far a cartoon could stretch boundaries in the 1980s, look no further than Inhumanoids. This was not just another hero versus villain show. It was a plunge into underground monsters, melting creatures, skeletal beasts, and storylines that looked like they belonged in a late-night horror anthology. Kids expecting toy adventures quickly found themselves watching scenes that left them wide-eyed and gripping the sofa. The antagonists were some of the most striking figures ever seen in a children's cartoon. One villain dissolved anything it touched. Another towered over cities like a nightmare brought to life. Even the heroes wore heavy armor and carried equipment that looked intense for Saturday morning television. Parents questioned why the show was allowed to air in its original form. Some scenes felt too graphic for young viewers. Broadcasters agreed, cutting or altering moments in different regions. But here is where it gets interesting. The very things that caused complaints are what made the show unforgettable. Inhumanoids pushed story depth far beyond typical cartoon plots. It introduced conflicts that hinted at environmental issues and dangers beneath the surface of the world. It dared to be darker when everything else was cheerful. Fans who grew up with it often say it shaped their love for science fiction. Today, people still talk about how Inhumanoids slipped onto the airwaves with its shocking visuals. It remains a legendary example of how the 80s let creativity go wild. even if that creativity scared half the room. Number 7. The Adventures of the American Rabbit, 1986. Few animated films from the 80s leave people scratching their heads like The Adventures of the American Rabbit. On paper, it sounded charming. A young rabbit transforms into a costumed hero with patriotic colors and super abilities. But once the story begins, things take an unexpected turn. The plot mixes cheerful music with scenes of destruction, danger, and unusual political undertones that feel far more complex than what the bright designs suggest. Viewers were unsure how to react. Was it a family adventure or a symbolic message wrapped in animal characters? Critics pointed out that the movie's tone jumped from fun to serious without warning. Kids enjoyed the fast action, but adults noticed the hints of Cold War-era themes running underneath. In some countries, reviewers said the film seemed to push national pride in a way that felt unusual for an animated story. Because of this mixed tone, broadcasters were cautious about airing it in regular rotation. Some networks treated it as a special event rather than a standard cartoon feature. Others cut scenes they felt were too intense. The unusual blend of cheerful animation with heavier themes left parents confused about whether it was meant for young audiences or older viewers. Still, the film gained a cult following. People admired its bold choices and unexpected ambition. It showed how even a story about a superhero rabbit could stir debate. The Adventures of the American Rabbit remains one of the strangest and most surprising animated experiments of the 80s. Number 6. Brave Star, 1987. Brave Star was unlike anything else on television. A science fiction western set on a distant planet, it followed a marshal who possessed abilities drawn from the natural world. Strength of the bear, speed of the puma, sight of the hawk. Sounds fun enough. But Brave Star took risks other shows avoided. Episodes tackled real-world dangers, difficult choices, and tough consequences. One episode centered on a young character who suffers a tragic end after using a dangerous substance. That single moment set off a storm. Parents called it too intense for a show aimed at children. Broadcasters received letters saying kids felt shaken by the emotional punch. Some regions edited the episode heavily or refused to air it at all. A few countries trimmed the series down to remove moments they saw as too frightening or too serious. Yet the creators had intended the opposite reaction. They wanted to warn kids about danger, responsibility, and the impact of choices. Instead of softening everything, they aimed for honesty. Some educators even praised the show for tackling topics other cartoons ignored. The divide between praise and criticism only made Brave Star more memorable. It stood out from the cheerful trends of the decade and earned a reputation for mixing adventure with genuine lessons. Today, it is remembered as one of the boldest animated series of the 1980s. Brave Star showed that courage in storytelling can be as powerful as courage in action. Number 5. Hulk Hogan's Rockin' Wrestling, 1985. If you want a snapshot of pure 80s chaos wrapped in cartoon form, Hulk Hogan's Rockin' Wrestling is the perfect exhibit. It arrived during the height of wrestling mania when larger-than-life wrestlers were everywhere. The show tried to recreate that energy by turning real wrestlers into animated characters who went on wild adventures involving pranks, rivalries, and slapstick brawls. On the surface, it was loud fun, but underneath, trouble brewed quickly. Parents wondered why a show based on rowdy wrestling culture was airing for kids. Many felt the humor relied too heavily on rough behavior and risky stunts that young viewers might imitate. Some scenes featured characters smashing through walls, throwing objects, or escalating simple arguments into full chase sequences. Critics complained that the tone promoted reckless antics rather than positive lessons. Broadcasters stepped in with edits, trimming scenes that went too far. A few countries delayed airing episodes until later time slots. The show's association with real wrestlers who were constantly in the news for controversial behavior did not help. Watchdog groups said the cartoon blurred the line between fun fantasy and unhealthy role modeling. Despite the backlash, the show built a loyal fan base. Kids loved the exaggerated personalities, fast pacing, and Saturday morning energy. It captured the spirit of a decade, defined by bright lights and big characters. Today, Hulk Hogan's Rockin' Wrestling is remembered as a cartoon that symbolized the wild charm of the 1980s, even when that charm sparked complaints. Number 4. Rubik, The Amazing Cube, 1983. Rubik, The Amazing Cube stands as one of the strangest ideas ever turned into a children's show. Inspired by the Rubik's Cube craze sweeping toy stores, the series followed a magical cube with a face and a cheerful personality who could transform, float, and solve problems for a group of siblings. Sounds innocent, but the show quickly stirred questions. The cube's abilities included sudden flashes of light, odd transformation effects, and scenes that felt more paranormal than playful. Parents raised eyebrows. Some complained that the magical cube encouraged superstition or strange play habits. Others said the show's tone was confusing, bouncing between silly humor and intense chase scenes where villains tried to steal Rubik for their own plans. Critics argued that the plot often revolved around danger rather than simple problem-solving. Broadcasters in some regions responded cautiously. Episodes were shifted in the schedule or edited to soften intense sequences. A few reviewers claimed the show pushed the boundaries of logic so far that it left kids puzzled instead of entertained. Yet that oddity is exactly what made the show unforgettable. Rubik. The Amazing Cube is now seen as a symbol of 80s experimentation, when studios took bold chances simply because a toy was popular. Its colorful energy and unusual charm left a permanent mark on viewers who still remember how strange and delightful it felt to watch a talking cube save the day. Number 3. Superbook. 1981. Superbook was an animated series unlike anything else airing at the start of the 80s. Produced in Japan, it featured beautiful animation, rich colors, and sweeping landscapes. The story followed two kids and a small robot who traveled through time to witness major events of ancient history. While the concept fascinated viewers, it also sparked immediate controversy. Many parents felt the show's depictions of major historical events were too intense for young audiences. Scenes that involved conflict, destruction, storms, or large-scale danger left kids startled. Teachers noted that children came to class asking emotional questions about what they had seen. Some regions edited scenes to remove frightening moments or trim dialogue that felt too heavy. Broadcasters worldwide had mixed reactions. Some embraced the show for its bold ambition and storytelling quality. Others felt it blended intense scenes with a tone that was too serious for younger children. A few countries moved it to later time slots or limited its reruns. Despite the backlash, the artistry and emotional power of Superbook earned it a dedicated following. The series pushed animation beyond standard light comedy and introduced viewers to deeper storytelling techniques. It dared to explore big ideas and show that cartoons could be visually rich and dramatically engaging. Today, Superbook remains a memorable example of early international animation, reaching global screens and leaving a lasting impression that still sparks discussion. Number 2. The Get Along Gang, 1984. At first glance, the Get Along Gang looked like the safest cartoon ever created. A cheerful group of animal friends, bright colors, simple messages, and problem-solving adventures. But the show sparked unexpected controversy because of its unusual tone beneath the surface. While it tried to promote cooperation, many parents felt the characters relied too much on emotional pressure to guide each other. Viewers said the stories often involved guilt, competition, or moral dilemmas that seemed heavier than intended. Some watchdog groups argued that the show subtly encouraged kids to follow group approval rather than think independently. Critics noted that characters sometimes pushed each other with strong reactions or exaggerated emotions. A few reviewers even suggested the show unintentionally highlighted negative peer behavior instead of healthy teamwork. Networks responded by quietly adjusting the schedule, placing it earlier or later, depending on the region. Some episodes were edited to soften certain character interactions. A handful of countries reduced its reruns entirely. But here is the surprising part. Many kids adored the show because it felt emotional and real. It was not just about solving tiny problems. It showed how friendships can be messy, funny, and sometimes complicated. The Get Along Gang found a loyal generation of fans who still remember the lively clubhouse, the roller rink, and the heart of the stories. Today, it stands as one of the most debated cartoons of the decade, proving that even the gentlest shows can stir strong reactions. Number 1. Bionic 6, 1987. Bionic 6 took the classic family adventure formula and cranked it up with futuristic energy. The story followed a family enhanced with powerful bionic abilities after a dangerous accident. Each member gained a unique skill, from super strength to advanced vision, and together They fought against a villain obsessed with turning the world into his own twisted vision of the future. The animation was crisp, the action fast, and the futuristic gadgets captured every kid's imagination. But the show also stirred controversy. Parents worried that the heavy focus on technology, cybernetic enhancements, and genetic themes felt too intense for young viewers. Critics argued that the family's bionic abilities blurred the line between human identity and mechanical power. A few said it introduced ideas that kids were not ready for. Episodes featured intense battles, falling buildings, cybernetic experiments, and emotional scenes that surprised many watchers expecting simple superhero fun. Broadcasters reacted by trimming scenes or editing dialogue in certain countries. Some felt the show's tone swung between family warmth and heightened danger too quickly. Others believed the themes around transformation and advanced science were too complex for its intended audience. Yet the show gathered a strong fan following. Viewers loved the family dynamic, the futuristic world, and the sense of adventure that came with every mission. Bionic 6 ultimately became one of the boldest science fiction cartoons of its time. It remains a standout example of how the 1980s embraced big ideas even when those ideas split public opinion. The 1980s never played it safe, and these cartoons prove it. Bright colors hid bold ideas, strange risks, and moments no one expected. Which entry shocked you the most? Tell me below because your take keeps this conversation alive. Hit subscribe, share the video, and stay curious. The wildest stories often come from the places we least expect.